So I wanted to go over really briefly a new technique that I put up on my blog. And this is a technique that I'm just, for lack of a better term, calling a subtle body integration technique. Now, this technique is really utilizing some of the imaginal, but also working in some subtle body energies, and it's trying to unite both an energetic and an imaginational process. So this would be somewhere along the lines of the middle pillar ritual, without necessarily bringing in divine names or anything like that. Although that's entirely up to you if you choose to do that. So basically, the idea here is we're going to keep this kind of somatic, but the idea here is that we're going to think about parts of ourselves, whether or not that's thinking about them in terms of time and temporal ideas like that. So thinking about parts of ourselves that maybe have yet to come into being, or possibly parts of ourselves that are that we may have lost, right? So a part of ourselves that we know is us, part of our own identity, but that we no longer feel as in touch with. Now, obviously, sometimes that's not going to serve your own purpose. And if you reflect on that and think, that doesn't serve my own purpose, then don't do this technique for that, right? But if it is something that you really feel is core to your identity, but it's something that you're not in touch with, this actually gives you the opportunity to try to draw that out and really integrate it back into your consciousness and into your awareness, which is the same thing. But also bringing a somatic sense to that. Now, when I say somatic, if ever you've had part of your body fall asleep, let's say, you're sleeping on your hand and then or your arm, and that happens to me a lot. I'll like fall asleep and then all of a sudden my arm's asleep because I've just been lying on it weird. Or if you've been sitting, let's say, for a while, throughout your day, and then you get up and then you realize you're going to have to take a second because your foot's asleep, or whatever the case may be. Basically, you've cut off too much blood for too extended of a period of time, and so those nerves aren't really firing the way that they should be. So take this idea, right? I mean, it's happened to us, to most of us at some point or another. So take this idea, and you're going to combine that idea with the idea of your subtle body, right? And so when I'm talking about the subtle body, I'm talking about, generally speaking, the chakra system within your body, and I'm talking about the different channels between the different chakras and stuff like that are thought to move energy up and down and allow for a general better flowing of energy, subtle body energy, kundalini energy, chi energy, all those sorts of things throughout your body. So these are like two kind of similar ideas, and I'm asking you in the imaginal or to combine them in a creative way. So just to recap, you got two things. It's only two, really, right? The subtle body and the experience of that part of yourself, of your part of your physical body, that is to say, that tends to fall asleep. And we're going to combine those two things with the idea of parts of your identity. Once again, so let's say you used to sing back in the day, right? And it's just been a very long time since you've ever felt joyful enough to actually start singing, or maybe you did something creative. Maybe you had been very good at being organized in the past, and for whatever reason, that is not something that's been a part of your identity. Well, the idea here is that we're going to introduce that back. Now that's sort of like facing retroactively, but looking proactively, you can see how this is also important, right? So imagine, again, this is a fusion of these three ideas. Imagine that there's a part of yourself that you think is important, that of all the different parts of you that you could be, you're going to imagine something about you in the future that for whatever reason you're not in touch with yet, right? And of course, we don't know what the future brings. But the idea here is that you are bringing forward that thing that you may not have even realized what it is yet, but you're going to bring that future state into your current identity, okay? And how we're going to do that is we're going to pretend, or we're going to imagine that it's somewhere adjacent to our existing subtle body, our existing energy field, but it's asleep in the same way that when you fall asleep, your arm falls asleep and you just can't feel it, but it's actually there. It's still very important. So this could be something for the past or something in the future, maybe a skill you haven't developed yet, anything like that, right? Now, obviously, if you wanted to do that, to do this and incorporate things like divine names or angelic names or what have you, that's up to you. You know, there's lots of different ways that spirituality can be integrated here, you know, and used to enhance a core technique. And that's up to you, and you feel free to use your creativity. So, but what we're going to do is we're going to keep it kind of simple. And there are lots of different ways that you could approach this, but once you sort of get the idea here that, you know, you're combining part of your identity with the idea of your subtle body, and yet that part of your subtle body is actually just asleep, and you're going to work to introduce energy into that. So, and this could go for the past part of you or a future part of you that's important and core to your identity. And you're just going to set that intention, right? If it's for the future, that's fine. Go ahead and leave it nebulous. If it's in the past, or maybe it's not nebulous, right? Maybe you want to be a kinder person and that part of you isn't awakened yet, or more empathetic, or whatever the case may be. Or maybe you do have a skill that's actually really practical that you want to integrate. So how are we going to do this? Well, the technique is going to be pretty simple. So first of all, just imagine your energy field, right? And rather than assuming that the way you currently have imagined it is completely 100% accurate, you're going to allow for the possibility, or allow for maybe even the reality, that there's a part of that energy field that should be there, that you should be aware of, but it's actually asleep. So you can imagine, let's say, like for example, I have, the 5 fingers on my hand, but what if, I actually was supposed to have a 6th finger, right? You can imagine it like that, right? It doesn't have to be, literal like that. In fact, don't make it literal like that. But just imagine some part of you is actually connected to your energy body, because it's part of you, right? It's still a part of you. It just needs to be woken up. So the different techniques, I would recommend, obviously, calling down energy through your crown chakra, or calling up energy from Gaia, and allowing that energy to flow not only into your subtle body as you currently experience it, but also into and you could say this current future part of your identity is anywhere. You can imagine that being anywhere on your physical body, right? And so just imagine that energy coming in. And it's not going to be, a physical thing, but you might experience it somatically. But imagine that energy coming in to this part of your identity that you're going to associate with whatever mental form that could take. This could be, it's up to you, right? I use that example of a 6th finger just to give you an idea of what that might be like, right? So you're going to imagine that energy coming down. You're going to very strongly visualize that. You're going to imagine this energy center opening up and allowing more energy in, but rather than it only going through your normal subtle body system, it's actually going to come into that part of your subtle body that's actually been asleep. And when I say asleep in this sense, think of it as if, I've been, leaning on my, arm too long, and now it's, partly asleep. And imagine perhaps that wherever this future or past part that's fallen asleep, in the somatic sense, imagine that part starting to tingle a little bit more, and imagine energy sort of coming up in through that to wherever that tingle is. Right now, for whatever reason, I'm imagining this part of my body, being close to my shoulder and extending up from that. This is why I say it could be anywhere. So imagine this energy coming in, and just, I would recommend pairing this with breathing, closing your eyes, pairing it with breathing in deep inhalations, slow inhalations that are allowing energy to come in. I'm showing it through my crown chakra, but it could also come up through your feet. So imagine that energy coming in and eventually, starting to cause wherever you've selected on your subtle body, that energy, that part of your identity to be located. Imagine that part, that interface, as it were. If I were falling asleep right here on my shoulder, then what I would do, and that part had fallen asleep, then the energy would come, and then right here, I would actually be feeling some tingling, okay, after I had stopped leaning on it. So, but if it were like coming up from here, then for whatever reason, the habits that I've done psychologically, or my day-to-day thought patterns, or maybe the closure in my heart, center in my emotions, had actually blocked this off. And then all of a sudden, when you're breathing into, you're gonna, and now for whatever reason, maybe just coming across this video, you realized, oh, I need to suddenly allow this part of me to be more, allow myself to feel this part of myself again, or to feel this future part of myself suddenly awakening up, right? So you might, imagine this sensation as tingling as the energy comes in and awakens this part again. It's, I'm just using, this could be, any kind of part of your subtle body. Again, this is done in the imaginal, but sort of waking up, coming alive, and suddenly having, this is not necessarily in the here and now you're going to have an immediate effect, but rather down the line, suddenly your actual identity will start to slowly shift, in the sense that you're now incorporating an actual part of yourself, and you have available to you as awake and alive this part of you that you either had previously allowed to, fall asleep through either inactivity or purposely shutting it off, or this part of you that is actually developing and that is going to come into fruition through your attention and awareness, and allowing the natural energy of your own system to come up through that. So anyway, I've probably over-explained it, but if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Again, my name is Cliff. I'm from Enochian.today. That's usually the part you put at the beginning of this video. But anyway, thanks so much for listening, and feel free to reach out or leave a comment, and I'll talk to you again next time. Okay, bye.